Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 31 of the Other Six Podcast. My name is Chad Boak, and I'm your host. Joining me once again in the studio, our worship pastor and the author of the new self-help book that is math-themed called My Problems Keep Multiplying.
Right.
Matt Collins. Matt, how are you today, sir?
Feeling good. My problems keep multiplying.
That's right. Well, it's good to see you in here. And joining us in the studio, the birthday boy, our lead pastor, Adam Bishop. Adam, happy birthday, sir.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
you? Yeah.
No, we can't. We'll get a copyright strike.
You
That's
don't
right.
have, yeah, we don't need that to happen. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's today.
Yeah.
Kind of another day.
That's right.
Yeah, once you hit this age, they just kind of stop celebrating, you know. So.
Yeah.
But it's a big year, I think.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
43.
43.
43.
Yeah, 43.
Okay.
So, who's the most famous number 43?
I knew
in
you were
sports?
going to go
This
there.
is
I
where
knew
he
you were
goes
gonna
every
go
time.
there.
Absolutely.
Well, every year I have a birthday. That's how I frame the
Okay.
year. You know, I have issues, many. So
Well, I think it's clearly defined that Matt and I are not going to know the answer
We're
to this
not.
question.
last year was simple because Jackie Robinson, number
Okay.
42.
Okay.
Sure.
You know, it's the only number retired by Major League Baseball. So nobody else can wear number 42.
I did not know that.
Do you know the last player to wear number 42? So let me give you some context. When they made that a rule, as a way to honor his life,
Right.
they said if you're still wearing number 42, you can keep wearing it.
Okay.
But then once you retire, nobody's ever going to get that number
I
again.
understand.
So there's one baseball player, the last player to ever wear number 42, and it's very fitting. Do you know who it would be?
No idea.
No.
It was Mariano Rivera, the closer from the
Okay.
New York Yankees, who's a really strong believer, man of great character. So I thought that was really cool that he ended up being the last person to wear number 42.
Okay.
But I'm not turning 42.
You're
Chad.
turning 43.
43.
So what's the
So what is it?
significance? Yeah, we got to know.
Well, I don't know if it's significant.
I'm on my
but
edge of my seat,
the
man.
most famous number 43 in all of sports, in my opinion, would be Troy Polamalu, the famous safety from
yeah.
the Pittsburgh Steelers.
He's never not working.
So yeah,
The commercials? Yeah.
And so I
Dude,
think
what?
in honor of he's got amazing hair. So he
Right.
does these Head and Shoulders commercials.
Oh,
So-
it's that guy.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Patrick
Oh,
Mahomes.
all
Yeah.
right, cool.
Wow.
Never not
Matthew,
working.
Matthew.
That's right.
So I'm actually going to announce today my commitment to grow my hair like his during the next year. So this
How does
time
Morgan
next
feel about
year-
that?
I haven't told her. So this time next year, when we're sitting here, I'm going to have hair like that. It's
That's
going to be
awesome.
pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my goal for this year.
Okay.
I haven't really
He'll have his
committed.
own
Yeah.
spot for Head and Shoulders.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, I'll be on the commercial.
There we
Me
go.
and Patrick Mahomes and Troy Polamalu.
That'll be
Yeah.
really fun to watch.
Yeah,
Now, I
I'm
got to tell
excited
you,
about it.
in honor of your birthday, Matt and I did get you a little something.
Yeah, we did.
And it is
Very nervous.
Super proud of it.
the very first
Yard sign.
All
for
right.
Easter
Wow.
With a
at
little
Vaughn
Star
Forest
Wars
Church with a
pin.
little pin. So
Okay,
that's
is that how we're going to hand them out on Sunday with a pin clip to it?
Yeah.
that was just Matthew's edition. So
right.
yeah,
I will-
Well, I felt like I
That's
had
for
to
you,
give you
buddy.
something. Chad gave you a sign. I was like,
I
well, let's give you
appreciate
a little
this.
pin.
I
Right.
feel special.
I'm like
I
peeking up
think
behind it
this
here.
is the only one that got made.
no, we have
So-
a bunch of those actually.
Oh, okay. So I will
Yeah.
be the first. I'm going to take it home today.
Yep.
I'll put it in my yard.
Yep.
And I will be the first person in our community to display.
It's
our
not
That's
assembled,
right.
though.
It's not a
It's
symbol.
not
Yeah,
a
we have
symbol.
a stand
y'all,
for
y'all
you.
know y'all gonna have to take care of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I have to admit, let me brag on myself a little bit, Chad. I've gotten a lot handier at fixing things and
Yeah.
building things and all kind of things. So moving to a what do I live on now?
A mini farm.
A mini
Mini
farm.
farm,
right.
Will help you with that.
That's
You know,
right.
There's always something to be done.
So what you're saying is you can handle the sign.
Yeah, that's actually how I'm celebrating my birthday is like going home and just like doing a ton of work. Because I don't know if you've noticed, like
So
spring has
send
sprung.
him
You know,
the
like
sign.
Right.
everything's growing, and
Yeah.
I got a lot of work to do outside when I get home tonight. So that's how I'll be celebrating.
Well, you enjoy that birthday, and but we are happy that it is your birthday,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that you guys are back. You know, I missed you guys last week. Justin and PJ did a great job. We had a great conversation in last week's episode, but I did miss you guys,
We
and
missed you too.
I hope you guys had a good, well-deserved vacation and time off. So,
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good getaway, and y'all did a great job of the podcast. I was entertained by
Mm-hmm.
it, so that was fun. But it's good to be back. You know,
Yeah.
Yep.
It was fun. This series, it kind of gave me a little break from teaching. I was only missed one Sunday. I was here
Right.
the other 2 Sundays, but you know, you guys kicking off the series, and we talk about it all the time. Like we really are, you know, a team of pastors. You know, I'm
Right.
just one of the pastors. We have different responsibilities, but I think it's cool for our church to kind of get to hear. From you guys over the last few weeks, kind of share and
Yeah.
give some
Yeah.
different perspectives, and gives me a little bit of an opportunity to kind of look ahead. You know, we got this little thing called Easter we're going to talk
Right.
about here, probably
Right.
some.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so I'll be teaching now till the end of the school year.
Okay.
which is kind of hard to think about that we're actually getting to a place where we could say that.
It's just crazy.
So it's good for our church. It's good for y'all, and it's good for me. So everybody wins, and so that was it's been a fun few weeks.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, to kind of get to exercise that muscle a little bit, and
it was really fun.
It's really an honor to get to do that. Well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah,
everybody did really good.
Yeah, it was a
since
fun couple
Chad
weeks.
taught, and it's my birthday, I'm gonna go ahead and dip out now. I'm gonna let y'all handle the rest of this.
Yeah.
No, I've missed being in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We may go long today. Talk.
Absolutely.
Well, we talked about the series. This is week what? That was week.
That was week 3.
Three.
Yeah,
Three.
week
So
3.
you're week 4.
I'm week 4.
So can we revisit the big idea for this series?
Sure.
I think it was our lives are
lived from the inside out,
okay.
but they're managed from the outside.
See, this is
in.
why I don't preach.
Yeah,
I can't even remember.
Right, and so basically, what I think that that big idea, what it means is that there's so much about our lives. We make so many decisions internally. We perceive everything from inside our own minds, right? And so we live our lives from the inside out, but there are all of these circumstances, things beyond our control, different things that happen in our lives that we have to adapt to. So while we live our lives from the inside out, we have to manage our lives from the outside in.
Yeah, you gave a really good example about,
what's that?
About setting goals and then like weight loss.
Oh yeah.
And then you're talking about waking up early and your kids waking you up at 2:00 and throwing that off. Is that from experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you can make all of these
I don't
plans.
know. Like I have a fur baby.
You have a dog,
yeah. A dog.
Yeah,
he doesn't do that.
Yeah, you can make all of these plans. Hey, I've got I want to get up early. I want to work out. I want to eat right. I want to all this stuff. And then like one thing can happen in your life and it completely derails every one of your plans. And so it's tough sometimes, and that's why it's important to do the best you can to develop these healthy rhythms and habits in our lives in order so that when those things do come along, it doesn't throw you too much.
Another example would be no one has more conversations with you than you.
Right.
Oh man,
it's
that's true.
all of the thoughts in our minds, and so we have more influence over ourselves. Nobody speaks to us more than us.
Right.
So that's our lives are being lived from the inside out.
Yeah.
But if you want to manage it from the outside in, be mindful of what you let into your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how you manage it. So what am I watching? What am I consuming? What am I viewing? Right. That is going to affect the thoughts that I'm then telling myself.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. And if you really start to think that way, you start to notice that that's pretty much every area of our life.
That's right.
So it's coming from the inside. The heart is the wellspring of life. But I do things with what I do with my time, how I just mentioned, watch things, listen to things that are going to affect. My parents used to tell me, garbage in, garbage out. If you consume your mind full of garbage, don't be surprised if that's then what comes out. So it's a good principle to remember that you can do a lot to manage what is coming out of you, and your words and your thoughts and your actions and your attitude.
That's right.
So I think in this series we're just trying to draw some attention to that and see what God's word has to say about it.
Yeah, that's
right.
good. Well, you talked about healthy rhythms with work and rest.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Well, I mean, it's so much of what we do, right? I mean, think about the amount of time you spend at work every single day, at work every single week. I mean, there are some times, I'm so busy that my coworkers are the ones that see me more than my family those particular seasons. Yeah. And so, I remember when we first started talking about this series, Replenish, and we were kind of the teaching team. We were going through a book, and Adam, we went in there and we put some different topics up on the board. And I think you even asked a question like, which one of these disciplines or habits do you struggle with the most? And I said, oh, well, definitely, rest, because I tend to work too much. And you're like, well, that's the one you're preaching on. And and so, it was really good, for me personally.
I don't recall that going down.
That's not how that went down at all.
I guess it did though.
Yeah, but
obviously.
But no, it was really good for me, to study this and to see what God's word has to say about it. But I mean, finding that healthy rhythm between the two, it's so important. God's word has so much to say about it. I mean, it's not silent on this idea of how we should work and how we should rest.
Yeah, and I think we need to spend some time on this podcast kind of unpacking that. The whole idea of rhythm of work and rest. Because if you can ever begin to figure out, like what you were talking about yesterday, it can change a lot of things. So let's just kind of go around the table and have some fun with this.
Oh, great. Pop quiz.
Yeah, pop quiz. Are you mindful of your daily rhythms, your weekly rhythms, and your seasonal rhythms as it pertains to work and rest? So, I'll give you a second to think about that. So like a daily rhythm. I remember when Justin was in here a few weeks ago, we talked about, Matt, I think you were asking us, when's the best time to get into God's word? And some of us, it was in the morning. Some of us, it was in the evening. There's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
But that would be a daily rhythm. What time of the day are you at your best? What time of the day are you probably going to be a little more exhausted, and you got to be mindful that you don't lose your temper? So do you know a daily rhythm? Do you go to bed at the same time every night, or does it depend on the evening? Do you get up what's your weekly rhythm?
Right.
Do you take a Sabbath? You talked about that in the message yesterday.
That's right.
And then what is a seasonal rhythm? And a seasonal rhythm is the one that I've probably tried to clue into the most over the last 5 to 10 years. So let's just talk about the last 3 months.
Sure.
So, I do a lot of things, but the thing that I probably have to make sure I do well every week is teach on Sundays. Because if I get up there and I'm just like, I just didn't have time this week, guys. So,
hey guys,
anybody got anything they want to share?
We're gonna bring the band back out.
Yeah, that's probably not gonna go well.
We're gonna redo that song again.
Yeah, that's right. So I better make sure I'm
We're gonna do
prepared.
Waymaker that day. It's 12 minutes long.
I like Waymaker. I'd probably be all right with that. So I have figured out that about 8 to 9 weeks in a row is probably about all I can do.
Right.
And then I need a little bit of a break. So ironically enough, starting this Sunday, I'll go for the next 8 to 9 weeks.
Yeah.
So that would be what I'm talking about, seasonal rhythm. So, in your line of work, do you know if there's a seasonal rhythm? Some jobs are more easy to detect that than others.
Right.
Obviously, if you're a CPA, right now, you're working a lot.
That's right.
So I think it's good to just say, all right, do I know what my daily rhythm is, my weekly rhythm is, if you want to call it a monthly rhythm, a seasonal rhythm? So I gave y'all a little bit of time to think about that. So y'all talk about that, because I think the more people talk about how they see that in their own lives, it begins to help others see how to identify that rhythm in their lives.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a creature of habit. I'm one of these guys. I like, I could eat the same thing, every single night for dinner and be really happy about it. Christy is not that way. She's got to have, variety. So I, my daily rhythm, I tend to try to get up at the same time, work out at the same time, have quiet time at the same time, get, ready for work at the same time, arrive at work at the same, I try to do that. And what that ends up happening is when something throws a stone into the pond that is my daily rhythm, it's tough for me to kind of recover from that. But, you just have to kind of build that in and be able to adapt and be flexible. And then, for obviously being a pastor, we have a weekly rhythm that centers around Sundays. But at the same time, because we get to Sabbath, on Friday and Saturday, we can kind of then center our rest rhythm around that. So there's certain days I know I have to get certain things done. And then seasonally, it's really interesting. Easter's coming up. And so obviously, that's a bigger time. Matt, I know that there's no getting a lot of music ready for you or anything along those lines.
No, next 3 weeks.
And, obviously just knowing the rhythms of what happened, in the city around us when folks are moving to Montgomery, moving out, different seasons and holidays and things that center around. So, I think it's important to be aware of each of those. And but then also you have to be willing to be flexible, because they're not always going to go, according to plan.
Yeah, I think I have the flexible part down.
Yeah.
I think seasonal I'm good at. I think, because you got Easter, you got Christmas, you got, summer, managing, volunteers and all of that and trying to maintain that. I think I have a system so that I can, have more freedom outside of work, if that makes sense. Because naturally I don't. So day to day, I think I'm a little bit easier. If something throws me off, I'm like, okay, that's cool. But, I guess in my line of work, you kind of have to be like that. You know, dealing with, creatives and stuff like that. You if an idea strikes, you go with it.
And I think, and that's good, because if you're creative, you've got to carve out some space for that creativity. I think a lot of marriages could get better and a lot of family dynamics could get better if this conversation was a little more intentional in the homes.
Interesting.
So a lot of times what's happening in a marriage is you've got one spouse who, for whatever reason, is in a season of intensity, and the other spouse is really desiring a season of kind of feeling a little bit more laid back.
Right.
And there's and the problem is there's expectations there that are not being spoken, and they're not on the same page, and they don't know why. So you've got to figure this out. Again, everybody's life looks different,
Right.
depending on your career, or whether you stay at home or whatever.
Yeah.
Or your kid. So if your kids are involved in extracurricular activities right now, and you're doing a lot of different things, it's not fair to place the expectation in your life that things should feel easy right now.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
if you go, I just feel so stressed right now. Well, yeah. So, here's the thing, like, just go ahead and frame it. This is going to be a stressful season.
Right.
When does it end? And then when it ends, let's make sure we do something to swing the pendulum
Right.
to a little bit more rest.
Yeah.
And so, Morgan and I, we try really, really hard to structure our life that way. So if y'all remember a few weeks ago, we did that big women's event.
Yeah.
So we had the women's event, and I'm preaching every week, and I'm coaching 2 basketball teams, and we're going and we're going and we're going and we're going.
Yeah.
And those last few weeks, like it was crazy. It was
Right.
stressful. And I knew, and she knew, like we're gonna be gone for a week.
Right.
So we were gone for last week, and last week we did not keep the same schedule.
Right.
And so all I'm trying to say there is, if you can be mindful of that and talk about that and have these discussions, it can alleviate a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so many times we're unrealistic in our expectations of our life.
Right.
We're unrealistic with the expectations we place on our spouse. And maybe even the expectations we think our life is supposed to look like. And if you can begin to think about that and plan for that, I feel like what you can do is counter the myth of balance. Balance is a myth. It's unattainable, and so many people beat themselves up because they don't feel like they're living balanced lives.
Right.
Well, I don't see how there's a shot at living a balanced life. If you've got 2 spouses who are both working, and you've got kids in school, and you've got all of the things that are happening, your life will feel out of balance at times.
Right.
There will be times where, let's take my family, for example, where my kids won't feel like they're seeing dad a whole lot.
Right.
Oh my gosh, they're going to end up in therapy. I mean, I'm a terrible father because I didn't make it to every ball game.
Right.
No, that's not true. Because guess what? My kids prefer to eat 3 times a day. They like wearing clothes. I like them wearing clothes.
Right.
Society prefers they wear clothes. And they enjoy having a roof over their head.
Yeah.
So there will be times that demands a lot of me to continue to supply that for them. I've got to then be intentional to make sure that I plan for times where my kids are like, wow, dad's around a lot more. And you guys are like, has anybody seen Adam?
Right.
No. Okay, why am I doing that? Because I've got to have a rhythm to
Right.
these things.
That's right.
Our kids, our families, our spouses, they can tolerate us having to give a lot to something like work, as long as they know they're going to then get some of our time back on the flip side.
Right.
And if we've told them that and we're mindful of that. And I think that's helpful, especially, I was thinking about this, we probably need to have Morgan or some other women on here, more frequently so we can get a woman's perspective, because we all know they're smarter than us anyway.
Right.
But I think sometimes, women who have careers put undue stress on themselves because they don't feel like they're meeting some expectation to be balanced at home and at work
Right.
and with the husband.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that's a myth. You're not
Right.
going to be balanced, but you can put some healthy rhythms in place.
That's right.
And I thought your message did a great job of pointing that out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I mean, I can see, I can even look at that as like seasonals. Like it swings over here, it's really, really heavy, really, really busy, and then it swings and it kind of releases.
That's
I
right.
think you actually might have said this. It's like a tide. It rolls in, it rolls out. Like
Yeah.
I really like that example because
Yeah.
that helps me. Reminds me, it's like I can push through this because it's just a season.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's how God actually wired us. So if you think about the way that we grow while we rest. So it's a weird dynamic. Like your kids grow while they sleep. So you go, and then when you rest, that's when you grow.
Yeah.
So if you exercise and work out in the weight room, which clearly the 3 of us do. I mean, you wouldn't have to spend much time with that.
Like I mean, 80 pounds, dude. Like,
Welcome
Yeah.
to
let's
the-
talk about
Well,
the.
I'm gonna welcome you to the gun show first before we do that. No, if you think about the way you getting bigger muscles, you have to stress it and then rest.
Right.
Yeah.
God worked 6, rested 1.
Right.
So there is a rhythm, like go rest, rest. That doesn't sound like balance to me.
Right.
Balance is I'm always doing everything equally at all times.
Right.
There's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
There are going to be seasons in my life where my family feels like they're getting the short end of the stick and I'm giving more to the church.
Right.
There will then be seasons where the church may feel like they're getting the short end of the stick and my family. And that is perfectly okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's a rhythm. And I think so many times we place unrealistic expectations on ourselves, on our spouses, and on the role we're supposed to have that we just miss that. Now,
Right.
here's where things got crazy. Over the last 2 years, all of that kind of just blew up because
Absolutely.
there was no set rhythm.
Yep.
And so, there's opportunity in that now. Like you can reset a lot of things, reset your rhythms. You can reset your rhythm at any time.
Right.
But, coming out of this season, like don't feel like you just have to go back doing things like you did them before.
Right.
Which clearly is what you decided to do. To get to what Matt said, I do want you to share a little more.
What was the diet again?
Eat less, move more. Yeah.
And like, was that a real conversation you had with your doctor?
Yeah, actually, it kind of was.
Do you have this little star?
Yeah. So I
knew you were gonna bring it.
I'll get to it here in a second. But no, what you just said there, Adam, and I'll get to that whole story. It reminds me of a Jim Rohn quote where he said, "You can't change your destination overnight, but you can change the direction." Yeah. And that was what happened with me when I went to the doctor. So real quick, I'll tell the story. Last August, Christy was like, "You're going to go to the doctor and get a physical," and I was like, "I'm not going."
Really hard.
Yeah, I said, "I'm not doing this. I don't want to hear the bad report that I know I'm going to get."
Yeah,
it's like if I don't look at it, then it doesn't actually happen. That was kind of what I was
hiding
thinking.
under the sheets in the dark.
That's right. But she made me go, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that she encouraged me to go. I really do appreciate it. She cared enough about me to say, "Hey, you really need to get this done." And so I went, and the doctor, he comes back in there after the test and everything. He said, "Look," he said, "you're 5'7", you're 275 pounds. Like you've got to make some changes." And he pulled out a test that they did. I think it's called a insulin resistance test. And he said, based on this score, he said you are a 72. He said anything above a 66 means that you are 15 times more likely to become diabetic than a regular person. And I said, okay. And I remember going home and looking at the results in these tests, and he put me on these meds, and I had the thought of like, man, what is it that I want? We quoted that yesterday. Discipline is remembering what you want. And I said, man, I want to be there when my girls grow up. I want to be there when my grandkids are here. I want to be there, to serve, God's church as long as I possibly can. And so, it took some drastic, changes, hey, I got to stop doing this. I got to stop doing that. And I got to start doing these particular things. But what it was developing these healthy rhythms. And just like healthy rhythms, they ebb and flow. So the majority of the week I get up, 5:15. I go and, spend a little bit of time on the treadmill. I make sure to have discipline of the fork, not eat things that are crazy. But then this past week was Ava's birthday. She turned 10. And I had some cake. It was time to swing a little bit the other way.
Yeah,
and so it would have been unhealthy for me to abstain from that because then I'm hurting my daughter's feelings. I'm not celebrating
you're
with her.
missing out on the things that you were
That's
trying
right.
to work towards.
That's right. So anyway, this past February, from September to February, at the end of February, I did go back to the doctor, and they did a 6-month checkup. And so words are my love language. And so I printed out, and if you're watching, you can see this.
This man printed out a star.
It's a gold star, and it says most improved patient. And what I did was I handed it to the doctor, and I said, look, you do whatever you want with that, but if you feel like it's appropriate to slide it back across the table, you feel free. And he started laughing. He said, yeah, man, you get a gold star. And, I had that same insulin resistance test done, and it went from a 72 to a 4, which was incredibly healthy. He took me off the meds, which was my goal. And but praise God. I mean, it was a God thing. And it took a lot of prayer, and I'm sure I know I had a lot of folks praying for me, and so many folks in the church have come up and encouraged me through this process. And I've still got a little ways to go. But it was really developing those rhythms that helped me make that change.
Yeah, and I'd push back a little bit. I'm not so sure it was a God thing. I'd probably say it's a Chad thing.
Well,
so so many times in our lives, we want God to move on our behalf.
Sure.
And God's like, yeah, you go first. I need you to move too.
Right.
There's an old saying, a little story about this guy who walked up and he came upon someone who had a nice garden, and he said to the guy, you and the good Lord have made such a beautiful garden here. And the guy said, I understand the point, but you should have seen what it looked like when the Lord had it all to himself. So like we do have like something to do with this, So you're accessing the Holy Spirit's power to get you to do the difficult things.
Right.
But what you just told in your story is so profound that we're just going to camp out here for a second.
Okay.
All right.
Because there is a myth. We're unpack. We are debunking myths today.
That
so I
sounds
debunked
good.
balance. Let's debunk another one. There's a myth in discipleship that more knowledge will produce better disciples. It's not true. Think about what you just described. The doctor said, here's a revolutionary plan, okay? Well, everybody understands that plan.
Right.
You didn't need to learn anything new, okay? But what you had to start doing is you had to figure out how to do what you already knew.
Right.
And that's how our spiritual growth works. We are overeducated beyond our level of obedience. When it comes to growing in your faith, the last thing the American church needs is more knowledge.
Right.
What we need is more obedience to the things that we already know. So if you can get past love your neighbor as yourself, we'll let you start teaching the next series, okay? It's this idea that one more Bible study, one more knowledge, one more class is going to help me become more like Jesus. No, what's going to help you become more like Jesus are doing the things that you already know. So how did you make that leap? How did you go from saying, these are things I always knew, to now I do them?
Right.
That gap is the same gap that we have to address when it comes to making disciples and spiritual growth. So the lessons you learned to bridge that gap in this area of your life, I believe, are transferable. So let's unpack those lessons, all right? Well, first of all, you had some accountability.
Yeah.
Who was the accountability from? Well, the doctor prescribing the medication, but I bet it was a little more from Christy.
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because she loves you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's going to hold you accountable.
Absolutely.
And there's probably some times that she had to kind of, prod you along a little bit, right?
Well, also you guys, because y'all were very encouraging to me. You and I, we meet weekly. Matt, I would see you, and you guys would ask me about it. And
So accountability swings. It goes both ways.
Right.
Sometimes it's encouragement. Sometimes it's a swift kick in the butt.
Right. Right.
Sometimes it's a little bit of, hey, what are you doing?
Right.
Sometimes it's a, hey, keep doing it. Keep going.
Yeah.
So you had that. The second thing is you built in, and nobody likes this word, but it's a really helpful word, just a little system.
Right.
I'm going to get up at the same time every day, and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's not flashy, and it's not exciting, and I'm not going to post on Instagram to everybody that I just did it, but I'm going to do it at the same time every day. That is a system.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you got if you did it. And then the last thing you did was you were honest with the metrics. Okay, so here's how I feel. I feel like I'm healthier. Yeah, but the numbers don't say you're healthy.
Right.
Now you're at a place you say, I feel like I'm healthy. Well, guess what? The numbers say you're healthy as well.
Right.
So I think that there's some things there when it comes to, how do we become more like Jesus? Well, you've got to have some accountability. You've got to have some systems in place that consistently allow you to do the things you need to do. And then you have to be honest to the metrics. Now, what are the metrics in our life? They're called the fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness. And you don't get to call whether or not you're doing those things.
Right.
Others, that's your metric. If the people around you don't describe your life that way, I don't care what you tell me you're doing. You're not becoming more like Jesus.
That's right. That's right.
So I think what you've, stumbled upon, so to speak, matters. And then the final thing I would say, and this is, where so many people miss it when they're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap between I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not doing it, is you found your reason.
Yeah.
You found your reason. I about 8 years ago had to realize I don't want to have heart surgeries as frequently as my dad did.
Right.
So I started getting more active, and I started paying a personal trainer to kick my butt. And, I didn't like it one bit, but my reasons were I want to be able to ski with my boys when we go to ski slopes. I want to be able to do all the things as they get older.
Right.
That's what got me out of bed. That's what continues to motivate me.
Right.
It's not anything beyond what you described.
Right.
Well, for your daughters, for me,
Right.
it's for my boys, for Morgan,
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to like walking with the Lord, what are your reasons?
Right.
If you're living for, things here on earth, you're going to run out of reasons pretty quickly. If you're living with eternity in mind, we talk about that a lot here, treasures in heaven. We talk about, the difference you make, for the kingdom for all eternity. So those are all just things that, spiritual growth matters. this podcast, we're trying to help people grow spiritually. You're learning things in one area, I think, that can translate to that.
That's really good, man. So you also told us a story about your first bicycle.
Yeah, and when I developed some trust issues. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you said that it was it was just as important to figure out how to stop than how to start.
That's
Okay,
right.
So
Yeah.
before you retell the story, I was listening to you teach this, and I wanted to raise my hand in the middle of the service, but we have a security team, and they'd probably tackle me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, were you wearing a bike helmet?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Of course not. That's the difference of when we grew up.
That's right.
That
Yeah.
wall became really.
So no bike helmet.
No
Like,
bike helmet.
I think
you had
when
pads.
I think when my parents bought the bike, they bought a helmet for like appearance sake, just so like nobody would look at them side eye.
They
But no.
wouldn't judge them
No, there was no
Check out
bike
bike helmets when I was a kid.
No,
absolutely not.
I didn't. Man,
No, So the story is when I got my first big boy bike, I think I was
Not
like
that
6
we're
or 7.
anti-bike helmet.
No,
Right,
no.
sure.
Yeah, you need
I don't
to.
want any emails
You
from
need
upset
to wear a
mothers.
helmet.
Hardy's gonna run in here and
Yes,
get on
we
to
are
it.
pro bike helmet.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
It was a red bike too.
It was
right?
a red bike, and it was funny because my parents were actually here yesterday in the second service, and my mom came up to me afterwards, and she goes, "That bike's still in the attic." And so I could probably go find it.
Dude, we could have had the
Hey,
bike here with us
absolutely.
today.
Post it on the Instagram. Like, take a picture of the
absolutely.
bike and
Yeah,
post it on the Instagram.
the bike in question. But no, so what it was, I got my first big boy bike. Before that, I had like tricycles or bikes with training wheels, and literally all you did with those, you just went out there, you sat on it, looked around for a minute, you started pedaling, and then you started going. And so my dad takes me out there, and I just push this thing up, and I'm going, all right, and I literally just fall over right off the bat. If you don't have momentum, I learned, you don't actually get going. So I learned how to start. And I'm pedaling, and my dad, I love my dad, but he just goes inside. He's like, all right, see you later, have fun. And of course, this was back in the day when you could ride your bike outside, and who cared? It was no big deal. I'll see you when the street lights turn on, that kind of a thing. And
Good times.
So I ride around the block a couple of times, and I'm having a great time. I've learned how to start. Everything's great. I'm going, and I'm gonna come, and I'm gonna slide into the driveway and look all cool. And I go to press backwards on the pedals because that's
What kind of bicycle was it? Because mine definitely my first
well,
one,
it had gear shifts. It was a gear
so it's
shifting.
like a
it was a
mountain
big
bike.
it was a big boy bike.
Okay, all right.
I don't really remember.
I guess I never had a big boy bike then.
Yeah, and so I go to press back on the pedals, and I just
Sorry,
start spinning.
No,
Just start spinning there, because nobody taught me that you had to use handbrakes. So my point was, it was at this moment that I realized that knowing how to start is important, but it's just as important to know how to stop. And it ended up in a pretty big mess.
You learn the value of managing momentum.
That's right. That's right. But the point is that for so many of us, I think a lot of us that tend towards working too hard, we know how to start, we know how to get going, we pride ourselves on that. But a lot of us don't know how to stop, and you can sometimes see it in people. I never understood where this pride came from, where you're like, well, I don't take all my vacation days. And it's like, well, man, you really need to rest. Or, hey, I work
very nice to be around. I'll just say that.
Yeah, like I regularly work these, 12, 14, 15-hour days. And I'm going like, man, that's just not a healthy rhythm. And I think it's so important for us in our lives, and we see where Scripture talks about it quite a bit. I mean, God gave us the example of resting. And Adam, we talked about it earlier, those daily, those weekly, those seasonal rhythms. You have to find that rhythm. And one of the big things that we talked about yesterday was that our children are watching us. What are you displaying to your children with that?
Yeah.
And what do you want them to model, after your life?
That's why you take vacation days.
That's right.
You don't take vacation days because you hate your life and you hate your job. And
Right.
You just
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you do, maybe you're in a job right now that you really do hate, but hopefully it gives you an opportunity for something else one day.
Right.
But you take the vacation days to model for your kids what you hope they do one day when they're raising their kids.
That's right.
And you build memories.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't have to take a week off and take my family somewhere.
Right.
I mean, I enjoy preaching and I enjoy being here and I enjoy, but I do that because they're not going to be around very long. They're going to be gone. And then one day when they're dads, I want them to, so that's why you do that. But, the whole, like, knowing how to stop.
Right.
This is why, I am adamant about people keeping the Sabbath. So you got to figure out when you can do that.
Right.
New Testament, choose the day. So, my Sabbath is on Friday. Maybe yours needs to be on a Tuesday. I don't know when it is. But if you don't sit down with your spouse at least once a week and have a conversation beyond 30 minutes, marriage is probably going to end up in a tough spot. If you can't find time in your week to sit down with your kids and talk to them uninterrupted for longer than 20 minutes, which there have been weeks that I've reflected and gone, wow, that didn't happen this past week.
Yeah. Right.
That's the value of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is God's way of saying 6 days in the wrong direction is long enough. So you look back of the week. Did I have one conversation with Jacob longer than 20 minutes last week? If the answer is no, change that this week.
Right.
Yeah.
A good conversation to have with your spouse once a week on your Sabbath. And there were several years in our marriage where this was the conversation. I haven't had this conversation with Morgan in a while, but maybe I should. Maybe I'll do that this week. I'd sit down, and again, these are things we learned, and I would look at her and I'd say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank me right now as being a husband?
Oh, wow.
And then if the score wasn't 10, the follow-up question is, from your perspective, what would I need to do to get to be a 10? And then I have to be quiet, and all I have to do is listen, and she gets a chance to talk. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, my wife is telling me what she needs right now from me as her husband. So those are all things that can happen like on your Sabbath. Like, you don't have to get to a point where you're crashing into the garage because you don't know how to use the handbrakes, okay? Which is usually when people go, I need help.
Yeah.
Right.
God built a mechanism in place that allows you to evaluate your life in 6-day increments, every area of your life. Did you exercise this past week? Did you eat healthy this past week? What was your marriage like? What were things with your kids? Church? Life? What's the list? And then make changes going into the next 6 days. And it's amazing to me how many people just sprint through their weeks, week after week after week after week, and they never stop to reflect and ponder and consider. And then that's where they ultimately end up in a place where now they want an overnight fix. You know, and it's just probably not going to happen because it took you a long time to get to that place.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
What are some of the, I guess, the warning signs of us running into the garage or our lives crashing? What are some warning signs?
You'll have to forgive me for coughing.
No,
It
you're
is
good.
it is full on spring in Montgomery, Alabama.
I got pollen all in me. I think
water?
one of
apologize
the
for that.
things you want to, be mindful of is a short temper, short fuse. Are you reacting more? Are you more sensitive to things? That's usually a good sign that something's up. You're getting close to the wall. And you got to be receptive when people point it out to you. Like,
Right.
hey, dude, you seem to be a little on edge. What's going on? I would say that's one thing to be mindful of, that maybe you're getting close to a crash.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that that feeling of burnout. You know, that man, I'm so tired of doing this over and over and over again. You know, it's those kinds of things. You know, are you starting to miss some of the healthy rhythms in your life? You know, missing workouts? Are you missing time with your kids? You know, what you said there about the short fuse, I think that's dead on. That's the thing that I notice the most in my life is I tend to get real short with my kids or real short with Christy. And it's at that point that I have to go, okay, I gotta make a change here.
Burnout doesn't come from working too hard. Burnout comes from working too urgently or working without purpose.
Right.
So if you had to do the same job over and over and over and there's no purpose to it, like, you're going to start to feel burnout. If you're in a situation where everything's due right now and you're always behind, that's going to, but if you're just working hard, like, you get up and you put in a full day's work and you keep the Sabbath and you rest, over time, you're not going to feel burnout.
That's exactly
You're
right.
actually going to begin to feel like you're accomplishing something.
Yep.
So many times people, they feel burnout. They go, I gotta get away from this. They go to the beach for a week. They come back. Well, nothing's changed because they could jump right back into the working urgently or working without purpose rhythm. The beach trip didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Because the burnout was not a result of working hard. It was a result of how they were going about, working. And we work really hard on here to not work in an urgent manner.
Right.
Right.
Because the nature of what we do requires us to respond to urgent things from time to time.
That's right.
There are real emergencies. There are real needs, and we want to be there to love people. So if everything about how Vaughn Forest operates runs urgently, we actually can't serve people.
Yeah.
Right.
So we try to make sure that we, set things up to not be that way so that when needs pop up, we can meet them.
Right.
And, if you think about that with your life and your job, am I doing this urgently? Am I doing this without purpose? That's probably what's producing some of those emotions.
Yeah.
Now, the rhythm is the opportunity to address that, figure out how to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's good. That's really good. It's really helpful too. You talked about being content.
Yeah.
That one hit home for me. As a not being content with what I have, but with my work.
Sure.
When I look at what I do, it's always I could have done a little bit better. I could have done
Right.
more. Not being happy with the outcome of it. So like as a creative, I struggle with that a lot.
Sure.
I know that you probably do too, and Adam, you as
Yeah.
well. But that one hit home, man. So why do you think other people struggle with that so much?
Well, I think it has a little bit to do with the culture that we live in today. It probably has a lot to do with the culture we live in today. We see, and we talked about this in the message. We talked about limiting social media. We are.
Dude, that list was great.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah.
You talk. It was. I'm probably not gonna get it right, but it was social media.
Limit social media. Be aware of what's going on in the world at large, and stop a moment daily for gratitude.
Yeah, that was really helpful for me.
I appreciate that. Yeah. But I mean, we are hyper aware of what's happening in everybody else's lives. But unfortunately, that hyper awareness can be false because what we see people presenting
Right,
as their
yeah.
lives so often it's a front.
Yeah.
And so we see somebody else has more than we have, or we see somebody else, whatever it may be, and we feel like there's this force driving us for more and more and more and more, and it's never enough. We always have to get to the next mountain.
Yeah.
And I just said I think contentment is incredibly underrated in today's world, and knowing what it is all right, I'm happy with this. This is what God has given me. This is what He's called me to. Adam, you talked about working and fulfilling that purpose and getting, doing it as whatever it is that God has for you. I think just being content, man, it's so important, and it's a principle that we see in God's word.
Yeah, and I would say before anybody tries to figure out how to tackle contentment and get better at it, not to oversimplify this because there's a lot of power in what I'm about to say, is if you would start your day, I'm saying 10 minutes, just 10 minutes. Psalms, you mentioned Psalms 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Philippians, Proverbs, 10 minutes, and then pray this prayer. Jesus, help me to be content with you today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus, help me to see that you are all I need today.
Yeah.
I believe that Jesus will be faithful to answer that simple prayer. So many times Jesus is willing to show us so many things, but I come back to blind Bartimaeus where Jesus looks at him and says, what do you want me to do for you? It's like, bro, he's blind.
Right.
It's like,
What do you think he's gonna
Bartimaeus
say?
wasn't going to say, I want to sing in the opera. Like, he's
Right.
like, I can't see,
Yeah.
So Jesus asked a blind guy what he wants him to do. What do you think he wanted to do?
Right.
And I love Bartimaeus' answer. He's like, I'd like to be able to see. And so Jesus amazingly heals him. Why is Jesus asking a blind guy?
Yeah.
Jesus always wants us to confess out loud to him what we need from him. So when you come to Jesus and say, I need you to help me be content with you and you alone, Jesus is looking at Bartimaeus and going, okay, now you can see. He will look at us and say, I can show you that.
That's right.
I can be all you need. But you got to pray the prayer.
Yeah.
Because if you don't pray the prayer and that need starts to feel like it's getting met somewhere else, ultimately that's going to be deceptive. And so Jesus wants you to say it out loud and then be aware when he meets that. And it's amazing how he can do that.
Right.
And you can begin to counter what you felt previously while you were scrolling through social media. What used to be jealousy now is happiness for someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad they got to go on that trip. That's
Cheering
so great.
them on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your contentment is now coming from a greater source.
Right.
And so I would say, man, that is one of the things that Jesus wants to supply for you in your life. But take it to him
Right.
and ask him for that. And you're going to have a peace that passes understanding. You're going to have a contentment. You're going to have a joy. Because if you're not intentional about trying to establish that in your life, it won't get established.
Right.
Because everything about our lives fights for our contentment.
That's right.
And makes us feel like we don't have things that we think we need when
Right.
we really don't.
Right.
So you've got to be proactive in how you're going to counter that.
Yeah, and it's a feedback loop because you're discontented. You go online, you see these things. If you don't find your ultimate source of peace and rest and contentment in Jesus, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Never forget that everything about your life is someone else's dream right now on the planet.
That's right.
There are people who live in other countries right now who everything about our life they dream about, they pray about, they imagine. For many of them, it's something that is just it's not attainable.
Right.
It's a fairy tale dream.
Right.
And yet it's our everyday life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so many times, we think that. And then I would say, have some fun. Like, think it's my birthday today, so it's a little easier to do it. Like, 20 years ago, if you had described my life today, I would have said, well, it can't ever get any better.
Right.
It can't ever get any better. Like, there would never be anything that would need to be added to my life to make that better. I would never have dreamed in 20 years ago what someone would describe my life as now. So many times in life, we just get stuck in that, year after year after year, and every now and then reflect and go, if 23-year-old Adam could speak to 43-year-old Adam, what would he say?
Right.
He'd be like, dude.
High five.
Right? You're blessed. And I am blessed. And we
Yeah.
are blessed. And if you live in this great country, you're blessed too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the global piece I thought you brought in was really helpful. That, we're sponsoring now 100 kids in a village in Peru.
Right.
That for $38 a day, get everything they need. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So, globally speaking, I mean, there's all kind of websites where you can go punch in what you earn annually and see where you rank globally.
Right.
And it's pretty staggering the little amount of money you have to earn to be ranked in like the top 5% of global earners.
Right.
So we're very, very blessed.
Yeah.
And so we need to recapture that contentment.
Yeah, and I think gratitude is one of the biggest weapons to fight discontentment. When
Yeah.
you're grateful, when you can see what it is, that all that God's blessed us with. I mean, man, salvation's more than enough. My goodness, but God has blessed us so far beyond what we can imagine. And so when we have that daily gratitude, it really does a good job helping us with that contentment.
Yeah. Well, you ended by talking about 4 things we can do to Sabbath and find peace in Jesus.
Yeah.
One of them being, I'll just list all 4
Sure.
of them: stop, rest, delight, and contemplate.
Yeah.
What does that look practically? Like,
Yeah.
how do we do that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we like to be very practical around here, and
Obviously.
when we say, to Sabbath, what are some things we can do? Well, first thing we have to do is we have to stop. We have to stop whatever it is that we're doing in the normal rhythm of our life. We have to stop. We have to rest. We have to, whatever it is, maybe it's sleeping in on the weekends a little bit. Maybe it's getting up early and reading a book, whatever it is that brings you rest. Delight is the third one. What is the thing that you really enjoy doing? Is it being out in nature? Is it playing the guitar?
Yeah.
Is it playing a video game occasionally? Is it being around your family? For some people, it's cooking gourmet food and delighting in that food. But do something, Scripture talks about times of fasting. Scripture also talks about times of feasting. And so you have to delight and then contemplate, which is really a lot of what we've been talking about already, whether that's reading God's word, worshiping, prayer, but really setting aside some time in the midst of that stop, rest, and delight to contemplate God's goodness and to really just, maybe restore the relationship a little bit, because ultimately the way our souls are replenished is by going to Jesus.
Yeah.
That's good. And never forget that, that's one of the reasons God gave us each other.
That's right.
Very few of us are wired to do everything you just said individually,
Right.
on a one-on-one basis, with me being one-on-one with myself. That's typically driven conversationally. Maybe it is in a group
Sure.
with other guys. Maybe it's in a couples group with other couples. Maybe it's with a friend over coffee or lunch. But, you can talk these things out with people.
Yeah.
I mean, the things I've shared about parenting or marriage are things that were shared with me.
Right.
Yeah.
As I shared with a guy, somebody further along in their walk with the Lord, like, hey man, what are some things you did to help you in your marriage? That whole scale of 1 to 10, like I got that from somebody else.
Sure.
I didn't
Yeah.
make that up. So don't ever feel like you're having to do this alone.
Right. That's right. That's 100% right.
The best times are just wasting time with your friends. You learn so much, man.
Right.
Like every time I hang out with you guys, I learn so much, and it's like we're just hanging out, wasting time.
Yeah.
So.
And really does replenish, replenishes the soul.
Yeah.
Well, good conversation today, guys.
Yeah.
I think, I've really enjoyed this series. And Adam, again, thank you for the opportunity to get up and teach on the weekends. I'm looking forward to this week as we kind of continue that. But before we go today, I want to talk a little bit about 2 things coming up on the horizon. The first being our night of worship and baptism, and that's Thursday, April 14th. Is that correct?
Yep.
From 6 to 9. No, not 6 to 9. Sorry.
Man, that's a long
6 to 7:30.
7:30, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
What-
don't know if we can hold people in there for
Sorry.
until 9 o'clock.
So what all are we going to be doing that night? I mean, obviously we'll have some music going on. And
A
what
lot of
else we got?
music and some baptisms, man, which
Yeah.
are going to be really awesome. I'm fired up about
Yeah,
that.
that's going to be great.
Yeah, and we are going to have childcare.
Okay.
So up through first grade.
Okay, so first grade and under.
We used Henry as the gauge on that. So Henry's in kindergarten, and we're not sure he could make it through an hour and a half of
Well,
worship.
yeah, obviously it's
So,
9 o'clock.
yeah,
man.
my bad.
We just extended to first grade,
Yeah.
So if you've got little ones up through first grade, we'll make sure they're taken care of.
Yeah.
Second grade and older. Now, look, if you've got a kindergartner that can, more power to you. I just know mine.
Right.
So we're not saying you can't bring them with you into the night of worship.
Yeah.
We're saying if that's something you'd like to take advantage of, it'll be there.
Sure.
So yeah, it's going to be a good night. I think it's a great way to kind of start the Easter weekend.
Sure.
So to speak, and then that will lead us into what I'm sure we're going to talk about as the second thing, which is actually Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday, yeah.
So we did 6 Easter services last year.
That was a lot.
That was a lot. This year, we're just going to stick with our normal times, 9:30 and 11. And, we passed out some invite tickets this week.
They look like this if you're watching.
We'll have those available for the next 2 Sundays as well.
That's correct.
And, I kind of made a little declaration there at the end of the service, so I'll say this today and probably a few more times between now and Easter. I have not really, over the last 2 years, told our people, hey, you need to invite your friends to church. I mean, I recognize that if you are a truly lost person and you don't know Jesus, our society's told you for the last 2 years that you don't need to get around groups of people.
Right.
I think we've all watched enough football games and basketball games and seen people in arenas now that culturally speaking, we've gotten past that.
Right.
So I feel like you are not going to be sacrificing relational equity with someone who doesn't know Jesus to invite them to church now,
Absolutely.
whereas previously that might have been the case.
Sure.
Which is why I didn't really, challenge that.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is me now saying, no, without apology, you need to invite your friends to church on Easter because they need to meet Jesus.
Right.
And there's a lot of them right now who are more aware of that than ever before.
Yeah.
Whether they're verbalizing it in that way or not. So you need to ask them. Now, whether or not they say yes, that's up to the Lord.
Right.
Your role in this is to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't wait until the Saturday before Easter. Like, start asking them now.
Right.
They've still got a few weeks. They can begin to plan. Hand them one of these tickets. I've got a friend in mind who I gave an Easter ticket to last year, and we talked about it and everything, and he didn't show. Well, he's going to get another one this year.
That's right.
And, so I already know who one of my tickets is going to. And then there's a few other people that I'm praying about. And whether or not my friend comes on Easter, we'll see what the Lord does in his life. But my role in his life is to at least ask.
That's right.
So I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not doing. And I can feel a little nervous. It's like, I'm about to give him this and invite him to Easter. But you know what he said last year? Thanks. He was grateful for the invite, which is what I've seen most people say over the years. So be bold about inviting people to Easter this year so that they can meet Jesus. And it's going to be a real clear, Easter message. I'm going to talk about the resurrection. I'm going to talk about salvation. I'm going to make it simple for people to understand how they can experience salvation.
Yeah.
So we really want our people to go out of their way this year to invite not your church friends who go to another church.
Right.
God bless them, and we're fans of all the churches in town. I'm talking about people who don't know Jesus.
Right.
Friends, neighbors, coworkers, okay? If they can't join us on campus, you may have some extended family members that live in another state and they don't know Jesus. Invite them to join us online.
Yeah.
They can hear the gospel clearly presented on Easter Sunday online. So we're really praying this year for a lot of people to meet Jesus on Easter. So we've only got a couple of weeks.
Right.
So there needs to be a level of urgency to this.
Yeah.
And the tickets, the invites are just simply a tool. They're just a way to try to make that a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to Easter this year, looking forward to our night of worship, and I've really enjoyed this conversation today. So, thank you guys, and looking forward to continuing it this weekend. And I think that's a good place for us to kind of wrap it up. So on behalf of Adam Bishop, Matt Collins, and myself, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.